From a bench outside the castle in Owings Mills, Maryland, it is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live in the wee hours of Saturday morning to recap day 2 of the 2025 NFL Draft. If you are listening to us live on X or on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up, write us a comment. You're probably hearing in the background the sound of some light pitter-patter of rain, in which case I hope that helps you fall asleep. That's one of my favorite white noise sounds, Jonas, is a little bit of a light thunderstorm. And we're getting into summer, and what is your preferred white noise sound?
I don't need it, but I do like the sound of rain. In terms of like falling asleep, do you need a white noise machine?
Sure, and many people have called me white noise. So, maybe I should just listen to myself on repeat. Maybe you're listening to us to help fall asleep. Hopefully we keep you awake. We are going to discuss the Ravens' 2 picks on day 2, a second-round pick and a third-round pick. Second-round pick, Marshall edge Mike Green, and third-rounder LSU offensive lineman Emery Jones Jr. Jonas, let's start with edge Mike Green. Yesterday, the Ravens selected Malachi Starks, the Georgia safety, in the first round with the 27th overall pick. They waited for the board to fall to them. They got a premium player, a guy who was considered by many to be a guaranteed first-round pick, and in a lot of cases, a top 15 pick. Today, they went and got another guy who was considered by many to be a first-round talent. He is 6'3", 248 pounds, led the nation with 17 sacks this past season after a massive jump in production. The year before at Marshall had just 4.5 sacks, also had 23 tackles for loss, all in his redshirt sophomore season with Marshall. Now, he played his first 2 seasons at Virginia, and a lot of draft nicks had him as a top 15 talent. I think Daniel Jeremiah had him as number 17 on his big board, but there is a reason that he fell to the Ravens at number 59 overall. He told reporters at the Combine in February that he had previously faced 2 allegations of sexual assault and that he was suspended by the program, by the University of Virginia program, prior to the 2023 season. Now, he denied these allegations, and he has never been charged. According to The Athletic, the investigation of the case has been suspended. That's what the Charlottesville police sergeant told them. One allegation of these 2 was in high school. The other one was at the University of Virginia. Ian Rappaport also reported that Mike Green was off several teams' draft boards because of this, and that is primarily, we can assume, the reason that he fell to the Ravens despite the fact that he was a premier talent.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the draft and how it fell and how he got to the Ravens as late as he did. There were several teams, pretty much every team, I think, had at least one crack at him. A lot of teams had 2 chances to take him. He was a minor surprise that he was still available at the end of round 1. It was a bigger surprise that he was still available in the mid-40s, and it was a huge surprise that he got to the Ravens as late as he did in the late 50s. And I think biggest surprise of all was that the Ravens took him, not because they didn't have a huge need for an edge rusher. This is a situation where Mike Green, unwanted by the rest of the NFL, and coming to a Ravens franchise that has been scrutinized this offseason because of what they've gone through with the Justin Tucker situation. The circumstances being what they are, this team being where it is a very fraught situation. I don't know another word to kind of describe where we are right now.
Yeah, Eric DaCosta did say, we met with him just about less than an hour ago here at the Castle. He said that the Ravens investigated these allegations against Mike Green very thoroughly, and they felt comfortable with taking him. He said, quote, "We understand the severity of what these allegations are." He also said that he met specifically with Mike Green for an hour and a half in his office. John Harbaugh also reiterated that he had heard from coaches, administrators, teammates at Marshall who were fully supportive of everything that he had done there, and he said it was the same at UVA. It is important to remember that UVA did suspend Mike Green, despite the fact that he said he could have stayed at UVA. He did make the choice to enter the transfer portal and head to Marshall for a fresh start. We did not hear from Mike Green today. He was not made available to the media. It is common practice that day 1 and day 2 draft picks and most day 3 draft picks are made available to the media. We might hear from him at some point soon, but as things currently stand at 12:30 on Saturday morning, we have not had the chance to talk to Mike Green or ask him any questions. In terms of the Justin Tucker situation, obviously, this is less than 3 months after the Banner had come out with our first report on Justin Tucker. The total is now up to 16 women at 8 different spas and wellness centers in the Baltimore area who have accused Justin Tucker of inappropriate sexual behavior. 2 spas say his behavior was so egregious that they banned him, and reminder that Tucker has denied all of these allegations. Jonas, this is a tenuous situation right now for this organization, and certainly questions that I don't think we came into this weekend preparing to have to ask John Harbaugh and Eric Acosta. But these are questions that as DaCosta said himself, these are serious allegations. They take those allegations seriously. And there is a reason that this guy was available to the Ravens in the second round. All of this is relevant information, and that's why we're discussing it.
Yeah, and we are full supporters of the innocent until proven guilty doctrine that prevails in U.S. courts. Obviously, there were no charges ever made against Mike Green. That bears repeating. But there is a reason that he made it as late as he did in the draft, and there's a reason why we're surprised that the Ravens were the ones to take him. We're eager to talk with him. I think it's crucial that you brought up that the Ravens did meet with him because it was reported during the pre-draft process that there were no known 30 visits. It's very different for a guy of Mike Green's pedigree, but it's also maybe not all that surprising considering the dark cloud that has followed him during this pre-draft process. So when we get the chance to talk to him, hopefully as soon as this weekend, maybe they push it back to when the rookie camp starts here in Owens Mills, we'll get the chance to ask him some of these questions that we have. There's certainly a bunch that have kind of colored his journey to where he is right now, with the Ravens taking him as late as they did. But listen, what they're getting is a guy who, despite all of the concerns about his character, is one hell of a football player. I mean, there is a reason that he led the football bowl subdivision in sacks. There's a reason that he was up there in tackles for loss. There's a reason that despite his size, he's considered a guy who can hang in there and make it work as a run defender. I mean, if this hits, this could be a guy who is like the Ravens' Von Miller, just an explosive, unrelenting pass rusher who could be the final piece in a Super Bowl roster. And it's interesting that the Ravens made this pick not only because it is something that you would expect a desperate franchise to do, because Eric DaCosta, maybe more than like all but a handful of GMs in this league, has a lot of job security. You know what I mean? Like there's no reason but to go out and take a swing like this unless you're absolutely, positively certain that nothing will come of this. And I guess I am sensitive to everything that's happened, but I'm also reminded of what happened with Tyreek Hill when he came out of his small school. He was a guy who was actually accused of more serious crimes. Mike Green, of course, never really had to worry about facing any charges. But when Tyreek Hill fell in the draft and when he rose to fame with the Chiefs, no one really talked about all the stuff that he was accused of in college. And even now, when he's making life hell for the Miami Dolphins, all really anyone talks about is what he's doing now, not what the pattern of behavior that might have started in college was. So it's a tough situation. Listen, I think we want to kind of set the case for what it is. We want to tell you guys what we know. We want to tell you guys what the situation is for a guy of this superlative talent to be available here late on day 2. I think it tells you what the NFL thought of Mike Green.
Yeah, it is newsworthy because clearly other teams, Ian Rappaport would not be saying this if this did not come from highly placed sources, that other teams had him entirely off their draft board. So there is a reason that teams had him there. And the fact that he was available to them warrants this conversation, necessitates this conversation of why he was available.
Yeah, and I think it's it's all the more surprising that he made it this late because, few draft analysts are as well sourced as the Athletics' Thane Brugler. And, you listen to him on podcasts, you listen to what he puts in the Beast. When he asked scouts and front office types around the league what they had heard about Mike Green during this whole pre-draft process, they came back, according to him, according to what they told him, even more comfortable in his background, even more comfortable in his character. But then you have this cognitive dissonance of, well, if that was the case, then why did no one take him in the first round? Why did almost everyone pass on him in the second round? And again, Eric DeCosta talked a lot about how they are very, very comfortable in the team that they have in sussing out what is true, what is false. You want to give the Ravens the benefit of the doubt, but also I think it's fair to have doubts about that credibility, because this same team that was the same legal/investigative team that was looking into Mike Green, trying to figure out what was true, what was not, could not find during the half decade to a full decade of these Justin Tucker allegations. There was no...
They had no inclination. From what they've said.
Yeah, from what they've said. Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh both said that they had no knowledge of the Justin Tucker situation until the Banner reported it.
Right. And yet today they were saying that they believe they have maybe the best investigative team in the league. And these allegations, which Tucker has denied, occurred between 2012 and 2016. And he's been on this team for more than a decade. And I will refer to our reporting there to discuss how easily this information was made available, and how quickly our reporters were able to determine the severity of these allegations. This may be, like you said, Jonas, the last time that Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh face questions like this about Mike Green. I mean, this, for the same reason that it is important that we talk to Mike Green tonight, when Mike Green comes to rookie minicamp, the focus will be him on the field. And when John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta have questions about him in the future, odds are the vast, vast majority, if not all of the questions, will be about his play on the field. So that is why it is important that we talk to them tonight and that you and other reporters ask the questions that you did tonight for Eric DeCosta and others. In terms of who Mike Green is on the field, you mentioned just how outstanding his production is. There were a few other guys that were available to them with that 59th pick. They stayed and picked there. Toledo's Darius Alexander, Trey Amos was on the board, Ole Miss cornerback, Shamar Turner. There were a lot of guys that were available. I think widely, Mike Green was considered the best available prospect for good reason. I mean, he has a bevy of moves as a pass rusher. He is explosive. He's very athletic. He's very quick. I think maybe there are some questions about his ability to stay on the field as a run defender. But in terms of getting to the quarterback, he's been compared to a guy on the Eagles like Nolan Smith, who was a first-round pick out of Georgia, who also took a year to kind of get his foot under him. I know that from what I've read that Mike Green is also adding weight. If you watch some of the tape from last year, he does look pretty lean. He's not quite, like James Pierce level lean, but he is a lean pass rusher, but he is adding weight and now up to 250 pounds. I think that'll be a big question for him as we get closer to the season. But in terms of a prospect, you really would have to be nitpicking in terms of his ability to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, and the most encouraging part of his 2024 resume was that even though he was playing at Marshall, he was not just beating up on these guys who will never have football be part of a pro career. He had, I think, 1 sack against Ohio State. I think he had 2 against Virginia Tech. So, and then when he got to the Senior Bowl, he did what he had to stamp himself as what we thought was a first round talent. Obviously that, teams thought otherwise, clearly, but there should be no doubting what he could bring to this Ravens team, by virtue of his talent. And they are not going to need him to be more than like a designated pass rusher, because they have Odafe Owe to potentially be an early down guy, because they have Tavius Robinson if they are worried about, teams running them over in the run game, to be a guy who sets a hard edge. there's every reason to expect Mike Green to potentially develop into a average to even above average run defender. You don't have as many tackles as he did at Marshall without being a at least competent to downright good run defender for that level. So it's going to be interesting to see what he can develop into in Baltimore for as long as he plays here. But take away all of the off-field stuff, and for the Ravens to get him at pick 59, considering the fact that some people had him as a top 10 talent, this could be, when we look back at this draft in 5-10 years' time, and people are going to wonder how Mike Green fell as far as he did, because he is a guy who could potentially be a Pro Bowl level talent. And what do the Ravens need to get this ball over the proverbial goal line? It is more disruptive guys. It is more guys who can take up your game plan, wad it up, and just throw it against the wall, because he is that good of a pass rusher. He is that special. He has bend, he has power, he has so many moves, and he just has a motor that gets himself into places where he can make plays time and time again.
We're going to spend a lot less time, I think, talking about Emery Jones Jr. than we did talking about Mike Green. Ravens draft the 6'5", 315-pound LSU offensive lineman. Now, he started 36 games at right tackle for the Tigers, but John Harbaugh said in the postgame, in the it's 12:50 right now, a.m., that he said in the post-draft press conference tonight that he believes that Emery Jones has a chance to be a swing tackle for them right away, and that they're also going to try him out at guard. So really, they're looking at him for a lot of different positions along that offensive line, and he certainly has the size to play tackle, but a lot of draft nicks were predicting that Emery Jones would be moved inside eventually. And you feel way better about the offensive line right now than you did 12 months ago. Because at this point, 12 months ago, we were talking about replacing 3 starters on the offensive line. The Ravens had just drafted second-round rookie Roger Rosengarten out of Washington. Ronnie Stanley was, less removed from his injuries, and there were questions about him because of the injuries that he suffered in 2023. You had a big old question mark at right guard, that ended up being answered by Daniel Faalele. So there were a lot of questions of that group, and this group is much more settled. But you did lose, like you said, you lost Patrick McCary, who was such an important depth piece for this team because of his ability to slide it in at just about any spot along that offensive line. You feel like Andrew Voorhees could get better from the experience that he got last year, and you hope that he stays healthy. But you obviously need depth. I mean, they lost some of the depth that they had even at tackle that wasn't Patrick McCary. So they definitely need to add warm bodies there. And the hope here, I think, is that Emery Jones is going to be versatile enough that you can move him around. And also you have some time to develop him because you're not asking him to come in and start right away. I don't expect him, maybe some nice training camp healthy competition for Andrew Voorhees at left guard, but I don't expect him to really push Voorhees for that spot, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I think the expectation is that on day 3, the Ravens take at least 1, maybe 2 more offensive linemen. I think I always think back to what Eric DeCosta said a couple years ago. I can't remember how many years ago it was at this point, but basically his plan going to every draft is to take at least 2 offensive linemen. Obviously you want one of those guys to be a day 1 or day 2 pick so that you are kind of hedging your bets. But you look at last year, the Ravens went and took Roger Rosengarten in round 2. They waited until round 7 to take Nick Samac, but at least they took him. So he might be a guy who develops into a backup center there behind behind Tyler Linderbaum. So we'll see. I think the expectation is that the Ravens take at least 1, maybe 2 more linemen, because Lord knows they need every warm body who could possibly develop into a guy who can help his team short-term, long-term, whatever it may be.
All right, one more thing that we should discuss from today, and that is Mark Andrews is almost definitely staying put. Eric Costa was asked about it after the end of round 3, and kind of what we had gleaned by the fact that the Ravens did not trade Mark Andrews today. And this is kind of the demarcation line for a pick that would be considered worthwhile to trade for Mark Andrews. And even once you got into the third round, you were starting to say, all right, if the Ravens haven't traded him by now, then it's probably not going to happen, because he's not going to be, if you're going to trade Mark Andrews, you better be getting back something better than a mid to late third round pick.
Yeah, I appreciated Eric DeCosta's efforts to kind of stoke that Mark Andrews trade fire a little bit by him saying that, well, you never know, at that pre-draft press conference last week. But to me, it was always, the logical thinking was, if the Ravens could not find a suitor before they paid him that $4 million roster bonus, then the odds are that they probably were never going to find a trade suitor who met whatever kind of trade demands they had. So, it doesn't preclude the Ravens going out and getting a tight end that they like. There are a bunch of guys who I think would fit who would fit the Ravens' need developmentally going forward. If indeed Isaiah Likely is the tight end in the future here, not Mark Andrews, and you are kind of committing a certain amount of good money to Isaiah Likely, then you might not have the money to sign Charlie Kolar to a long-term deal. So maybe you go out and go find someone who could be that inline guy, someone who could not just replace Charlie Kolar in whatever year it is, but also Patrick Ricard, because Patrick Ricard is also on a 1-year deal in Baltimore. So if the Ravens go out and draft a tight end, it would not be the most surprising thing in the world. You get him in the building for a year, you let him develop. Maybe it is effectively a redshirt year, and he comes back in 2026 and is a lot more prepared to do whatever it is that the Ravens need to do. I still think Mark Andrews can be a really, really good player in Baltimore. I still think he moves well. I still think he blocks okay. I still think he can be a really, really good red zone weapon. And I think probably most importantly, he can just be a guy who kind of sets the tone for the Ravens, not just in the locker room, but in the practice field, on game day. He's always going to be someone who kind of provides that hard edge. He absolutely needs a playoff breakthrough, but you can say that about a lot of guys, frankly, on this Ravens roster.
All right, day 3, what we're looking for. You have rounds 4 through 7, and the Ravens have a lot of picks. I mean, they have 8 picks left on day 3. Most of those picks come in the 4th round. Their next pick, in the 6th round, I should say. Their next pick is at 129 in the 4th round. They have 136, 176, 183, 203, 210, 212, and 243. Jonas, so far the Ravens have addressed safety. They've addressed edge rusher. They've addressed offensive line. You mentioned tight end as a potential position to go in and grab. When you're talking about day 3, you're talking about dart throws. You're not talking about guys that you expect to come in and be starters right away. But personally, I would expect them to go for a wide receiver at some point. I would expect them to draft another offensive lineman, if for no other reason than EDC says he likes to come out of drafts with a couple offensive linemen. And I'd expect them to draft somebody who can push the pocket either at defensive tackle or at edge rusher.
Yeah, they need a cornerback. They need a defensive lineman.
They need a kicker.
They definitely need a kicker. And I think probably the most interesting nugget that we gleaned from that pre-draft presser last week was that, according to Eric, they have 217 draftable players on their roster. So as much as you and I might be hoping that they don't hold on to all of those late round picks, certainly that 7th rounder, it's possible that the Ravens just really like where they stand and that they make every single one of those picks, that they don't, bundle them up, package them, try to move somewhere higher in that draft. If you have 217 draftable players, and that means that you can find guys that you really like at every single part of that day 3 process. So there are certainly positions that we expect them to prioritize, those being cornerback, defensive line, maybe wide receiver.
Yeah.
You never know. But
punt returner, kick returner.
And obviously kicker being whatever it is. So, I don't think anything that they do is going to overshadow the Mike Green pick today, even with them, potentially taking a kicker.
We'll be discussing it regardless.
Yeah, I'm just
on the
thinking of
podcast.
like it's so wild that tomorrow/today we could be talking to not just a potential first round pick, but also the guy who might replace Justin Tucker.
Yeah.
It's just
Wow.
only the Ravens, only in 2025.
217 is a lot. I just wonder how large that list would have to be, how many prospects they would have to rank in order for us to be on that list. Do you think we'd be like 3,526,252,851 on that list?
No.
You don't think we're in the top 4 billion?
I think we're
of draftable
we're a
players?
lot higher up. I mean, like
You don't think we're in the top 4 billion?
No, we're definitely in the top four. I think you're underselling us. Like, you know, as we've established, I have good size. I don't have good length. But
You
like,
might be.
but
You and
there's
I might
also
be a billion off.
there's also a world in which you go out to, you seclude yourself. You say, I know I love my family, I love my friends, but I'm just going to work like hell to try to develop into a reasonably good kicker or a reasonably good punter.
It's like curling if you just devote yourself to it.
Who says no?
Yeah. I don't know. It depends on what position we're being looked at, like you said. I mean, you got to consider, I don't know what percentage of the world are babies, but, we have them beat out. And what percentage of the world are, older than 80? At Jonas_Shaffer is his handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. Please write us a 5-star review, and I'll read it out here on the show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for staying up late with us. If you watched live or if you're listening to us after the fact on any of your favorite podcast platforms, really would appreciate a 5-star review. Thanks so much for tuning in. We will have more coverage tomorrow on the BaltimoreBanner.com, on the Banner Ravens podcast. We will wrap up day 3 tomorrow night. Hopefully not as late as we are now. But in the meantime, we'll catch you next time.